So, when we think about ancient Greek theatre, it's easy to focus on just the words, the dramatic speeches, the big emotions, but actually, a huge part of the storytelling happened through movement and space. In this video, I'm going to take a look at how characters, especially the male in relation to female, are positioned on stage in Euripides' Medea, and how that helps to shape power, emotion, and meaning. So Euripides' Medea is one of the most intense and powerful plays from ancient Greece. It's all about betrayal, revenge, and power. But something really important to think about is how the characters are placed and move on stage. That's where proxemics comes in. So proxemics just means the use of space between characters, how close or far apart they're standing, who stands where, what that tells us about their relationships, power, or emotion. It's a word which is often used in psychology and is closely related to the word proximity. In a play like Medea, that can totally change how we understand a scene. If the actors were placed differently, it could completely change the meaning. This could be done through height, perhaps the way the actors stood, using their posture to seem smaller, or being physically below the other person by crouching or kneeling. So the first example that we have of this in the play is the interaction between Medea and Jason, in which she confronts him about the betrayal he has caused her and the reasoning for his actions. At this point, she's angry and hurt and lashes out at Jason, who has gone against what he had once promised her in their marriage. The image here is from the 2018 production of Medea by Warwick students, and you can see Medea and Jason facing off against each other on the left-hand side. Here they are presented as standing face to face and on equal heights, which is really important because scholars have suggested that during this argument, Medea and Jason's actors would have been placed on the same level. So having the actors placed on the same level does influence the reception of their lines, since no actor is looking up or down at the other. Usually, having one person stood above another would put them in a position of power or control, and therefore Medea and Jason on the same level in terms of power and authority. So this would have been unlike typical husband-wife relationships or exchanges in ancient Greece, where the man is usually seen as being the one in control. The two actors being stood at similar positions and heights while trading remarks with each other gives a sense of equality in the situation. Alternatively, Medea's relationship with Jason on stage is presented very differently a little later in the play, when she's already launched her scheme of revenge. So during her second meeting with Jason, Medea purposely plays the role of docile female and helpless foreigner. This may be an attempt to throw Jason off and not give him any idea of her plans. In this, she lessens herself and goes to an inferior level, and we can assume that she physicalizes this. So she appeals to his good nature and apologizes, which may have been done at the same time as kneeling or crouching on the floor to show herself as physically below him. She also uses this to her advantage in her meeting with Creon, when she attempts to create sympathy and urge him to allow her one more day before her exile. This is an example of supplication, which was a formal institution in ancient Greece and sometimes involved an individual seeking mercy, help, or protection from another. In this scene, Medea makes herself a suppliant, which means that on stage she would have certainly kneeled into a lower position and may have also performed respectful gestures such as touching Creon's knee or beard with her hand. So this image on the slide shows an example of supplication, not from Medea in this case, but instead from the most famous example of this in ancient Greek literature, found in the first book of the Iliad. Here, Thetis begs Zeus to honour her son Achilles after he has been dishonoured by Agamemnon and appeals to him in supplication. Medea may have been portrayed on stage in a very similar position to this image. With Creon, it's very likely that Medea would have lowered herself in a physical way, perhaps kneeling or lowering herself in front of him. Earlier in the play, there is a written example of this, when Medea begs Creon by her knees, suggesting that she is kneeling in front of him while she pleads for herself and for her children. This may have been acted in modern reproductions of the play similar to the photo on this slide. This creates distances between the two of them, It puts her in a position of weakness in front of him, and it's important to note that Medea may use Proxemis in this way as a form of manipulation. So she's not asking for sympathy because she is weak, but because she knows that appealing to him in this way, in a physical position of weakness and despair, will work. At the end of the play, Medea is presented on the Deus Ex Machina, as shown on the image in this slide, which is an example from the modern Ninagawa production of Medea. In the play, she is sitting on the chariot of the sun god with the corpses of her children and is raised above the other characters into the sky. We can consider the image that this presents. As a woman soars over the house and the city which exiled her, she is above her husband, who is a man, stuck on the ground, locked out of the home that he abandoned, unable to reach his sons, who she has killed and taken hostage. Her final position, instead of having been defeated by Jason and Creon, is high above them, suggesting her status and power. The dynamics and proxemics are completely reversed here, with Medea positioned high above all the other characters, with them only looking on as helpless spectators. So, in Medea, it's not only what the characters say that tells the story, but also how they move, where they stand, and their position in relation to other characters, which is important. We can see how the power shifts between characters throughout the play by looking at the proxemics, especially in scenes between Medea and male characters such as Creon and Jason. So hopefully this gives you a new way to think about the play and how much meaning can come from things like movement and placement and not just the words.